I may kind of like lightly roast you, and I'll tell you why.
Okay. And so this is the opening of our episode. Please keep going.
So very, very fortunate that you're my first reader of the book, and you gave a review, and it was great, and it's funny, thank you so much. And so my daughter saw it, and she goes, "Dad, you only got a 4-star review?" And so that started the funniest weekend long meme of like what we should rate things. I said, no, listen, I told her, I was like, it doesn't matter. Like it's, what they thought. And so my brother read it and he goes, I'm going to give a 3-star review. It's just so good. It's such a good book. 3 stars. And then now we say like this movie, like we're watching, we're eating a meal and it's like, how good was the meal? Oh, so good. 3 stars. It was just so funny that like, that's the first thing she saw. That's the first thing she said. And I was like, everybody's, can rate it whatever they want. So that's been the weekend meme and trope is if something's really good, 4 stars max.
Because what would it take for it to be 5 stars? It would be like
I know that's
the ultimate kind of thing.
That's why I said there's different viewpoints of 5 stars. Like 5 stars, like that's like Tolkien. That's like the elite. I'm like 4 stars.
Yeah, well, you
good.
took it well then.
It's funny. She's like, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, 4 stars is
your
good.
Friend, Dad. You're supposed to have your back.
So the whole weekend has been the 4-star, 3-star review, and so yeah, we've got a lot of mileage out of that. So thank you for the review.
I'm just waiting for the roasting here, but okay.
Well, the roasted is here's the roast part. It was like, what? Why not 5?
Come on, bro.
What did I have to do to you? What did I do to miss the one,
bro? Yeah. Okay. So my rationale was, I felt that if I were to give you 5 stars, you would probably still ask the same question. Like, come on, I know that you're going to, where is it wrong? Where was it not great?
Yep.
And, I know you're not telling the truth. And like, okay, what's the honest thing? You know as well as I do. It was the putting, like, wave that thing up here. Like, this thing is amazing. The fact that you finished it, that's a huge mile marker. It's just a huge thing to have actually finished and then printed a project. So as you've told me, it's not 100% perfect. There's probably bits in it and like whatever. So for the reasons that I outlined in the testimonial, what's it called? Review.
Obituary. Yeah.
I thought the character, the outline of the story was fascinating. The world building, the hints, like I loved all of that. If you were to put me against the wall, I'd be like, sure, could some extra editing help? It'll always help. I rarely give 5 stars for a book, and that's just me.
That's what I kind of anchor with. I'm like, I agree. I think I'm very proud of it. Love it. I think that's a fun story. And looking at the potential future of many more books to come, I doubt this will be the apex, so I hope it's not, so I could see that. But I was like, knowing you, I'm like, I know like how he thinks of a rating scale. I was like, truthful and honest. And I was like, well, that's good. And so I took it as that. I took it as how because I know you, and it's not like, that's how I took it, but it's just funny that the first review was like so close.
Well, also I hope it's a little bit more human too, right? Because there are so many bots or bot accounts.
It'll be 5. Yeah. No, it was just it. Well, so it was like at first it was like Lucy going, "What was that about?" Then it was the mileage of us having this lovely joke. So it was all good. No, very happy with it, and so we'll see, and hopefully, like we've had this discussion before with like Brandon Sanderson. I mentioned him a lot because I listened to him a lot. And he's always said like his first 12 books were utter garbage, and it's like his 13th or 14th, whatever the number is, like in the teens, that it actually made some money. And he goes, unless you're like a J.K. Rowling or like a these other authors that are just the first book they write is instant success, he's like that's highly unlikely. But he's like it's also very good. Like if your first book is really good, it makes it really hard to make a good second book. So it's just an interesting concept that
that's true.
Yeah, well, at least from his perspective. Again, you could be like J.K. Rowling, write 7 books consecutively and have them all hits, or like, that's just the top one to mind. But
I think it's also like, especially for him, he's whatever we all might think about how he actually writes and whatever. What I love about what he's been able to accomplish, this is my read on it. He's able to to separate his ego around the creative process, to understand how to almost be like a factory line, to sit and ship and create and then just like put it out, because he understands the mechanics of what is needed to tell like a massive, captivating story.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard, this is not my genre of choice, but like Danielle Steele, like she cranks out book, I think once every 6 months. She's got such a formula that, and like you can like criticize or whatever, but like the fact is she's got a model that works. People love it. So she's just cranking out stories that people love and enjoy. She's making, you know, millions per book. So it's just like, it's interesting. That's a good example of somebody who I don't read their work, but the fact that they're doing something and killing it, like it makes me want to say, like, what are you doing? What's your, you know, what's your method?
So now the first one's out and you're at your first weekend. What are you thinking is not just next, but where's your mind at now that the first one is done?
Well, this one, like we were briefly talking about before, it's, you have that, you know, the initial friends, family network that you're reaching out. So you get like, you know, 100 sales if you're lucky, you know, good, you that first round. And now I'm at that point where, okay, let that happen. And now I'm like, where do I go next? I'm thinking about.
Yeah, you made that comment a minute ago about the first 100 being like your first sort of barrier to.
Well, because it's like you have that first 100 of people are buying the book because they know me and they want to support me, which is lovely and wonderful. But like, I want to get past the point of just buying the book because they know me. I want to get past, you know, so people buy the book, they don't even know me and they want to read it. So I think that starts with getting that initial 100 to do reviews and share and, you know, do, you know, get their point of view so that somebody else could see. But I am curious as to looking into, you know, literary agents or something, that next level that I can't do on my own. I know it's a different, I just reading some community pages about it. I think it's a bit different if you've already self-published. I would definitely want to ask like the legend fiction community and seeing, you know, shout out to them about that and get involved, because I know that some literary agents don't like if it's self-published. Some don't mind. I think there's just a process behind. There's maybe some paperwork because of ISBN numbers and etc. So I'm interested in that. I'm doing some self promo, you know, make some Facebook posts, hopefully going to do some, you know, videos about it. But at the current moment, still just being, you know, this has taken years of work. So kind of just like happy it's here, happy to see it, waiting for that initial round of people to see what they say about it. But I would love to go further and talk to some agents. But I know the question, if I get a catch from an agent, I know the next question is, how soon can you write your next book? Or, you know, I think just, again, reading the community of people talking about it, when you get picked up by an agent, they definitely want to know, you know, they don't want a one-hit wonder. They want something they could, you know, so it's just, it's knowing that and then thinking to myself, like, can I do that? Like, you know, how long it took to do one. Obviously, if there's some momentum on the line, I could push
the first
to do
is
another.
Always the hardest.
Yes. Okay. That's
because
what
you're breaking new ground. You're you know, tilling the furrows for the first time, so it's always going to be the hardest.
Yeah.
But literally having written the words "the end" on a project, and then having gotten to a point where you've gone through the process of uploading, and then now you hold it in your hands, it's a completely different experience compared to not having done anything before, like having learned any of the process in your own body, in your own self. So now when you go into the next one, the time process is just going to like shrink down completely, because
I think
it's always
so.
much, it's always fear that holds us off from finishing.
That is true. And I think just even like when I'm thinking about it, I could see a quicker route to an end and a quicker way of getting the characters to communicate with one another. For me, I don't know why that was the hardest part of writing. Yeah, the dialogue. It's because I would always, I don't know, I would act out the scenes out loud and make sure it sounded
By the way,
like real.
The action scenes, I remember thinking, like, there's the one action scene he's running away from Jagar, sorry.
Yep.
And I just remember thinking, this is good. It's visceral. Like, I had to pause for a second to appreciate it. So that's something you're good at. I didn't sense that you were struggling with conversations at all. So
well, thank you. I did read them out. I read them out loud to make it, because the two things I didn't want it to sound like soap opera-y, meaning like cheesy and like, how dare you, you know, it's like, that's when I read it out loud, I didn't want it to sound, but I did want it to sound dramatic, but I didn't want it to sound like cheesy. So I read it out loud with myself, and acted out the parts to see if it fit well. And then when I read it out loud as like a story to some, like to my kids, like I remember reading like the initial chapters, would it read well aloud? And I remember reading one chapter and it was just like clunky, and so I was like, okay, that reading out loud definitely helped. But yeah, that one was odd. And then once I got the hang of it, it's funny how I had originally mapped out the ending chapters, but then going through, so I made an outline of the entire story. Then I started with chapter one, wrote it, and then little by little they kept changing because I'm like the characters. And Stephen King said this, and I thought it was absolutely wild when I first heard it. He's like, you make the characters and the story writes itself. I'm like, yeah, blah blah blah. Like that's such an author thing to say. But in full honesty, as I'm writing them and as I'm having to discuss, like Theon, I had initially him saying and doing something like, after writing chapters 1 through 5, I'm like, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't say that. That doesn't really feel like how he would do it, or his wife, or so it definitely. And then I had to go, once I kind of found the characters, I went back to the beginning and kind of made sure that fit the same theme. But yeah, I don't know. For you, does dialogue come easy? Does scene description come easy? Is there anything that's hard on your side as a writer?
Probably what's hard is finishing something. So I've got this one novel that I started writing, and it was right before I got promotion at our day job. And then with that promotion, it's like everything changed, and I couldn't stay focused on the novel anymore. And
Yeah.
right at that point, I was in the middle of writing, like, was kind of meant to be like a massive scene close to the end of the book, and then there was going to be like more, and then there was going to be the climax. And then as I was getting into writing it, all of a sudden I realized, wait, this is the actual climax. I can push everything else off into the second book. And then I don't know if I got cold feet or something, because I thought, I can't write a climax. Like, I was saving that for later. And so it's now been over a year and a half, and I still haven't written the climax. And the book is like, it's 120,000 words, and it's just, I love
Which
this
is
book.
impressive.
And it's
Yeah.
just sitting there, and I just need to just finish. So I don't know. I've probably got like performance anxiety about finishing the end of the thing.
Yeah.
But like, to your point, gosh, who was I joking? I was chatting with somebody the other day about dialogue used to be the thing that I was absolutely awful at. And because I remember my first story that I ever wrote where I tried to put dialogue in it, and it had a little character. He was like a elf or a fairy character, and he was leaving his mushroom house, and he was trekking into a big house, and he was going to take a little elevator up inside the walls and then find a home up in the roof. And I don't know where the story was going. I just thought, let's just write it. This is fun.
It's great. Yeah.
And so I remember him sleeping at one point he paused to sleep in the basement, and there were 2 spiders who came to rob him. And I had no idea how to write dialogue, because I didn't understand what I was doing with any of these story mechanics.
Mm.
And so they literally argued it was like a page worth of absolute stupid argumentation. Frankly, the kind of thing I would argue with my brothers and sisters when we wanted stuff. Like, it's not actually coherent. You're just mad together. And that was kind of like a touch point. It's like, man, I want to get better at understanding how to do this. And so it's actually kind of funny. This past sort of month or so, I've had like tried to find a way to let off creative steam, and I found a button I could press, and then steam would just sort of explode out. So I would create just simply like dialogue skits, like play scripts kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
it's a great way to work on dialogue.
what I'm noticing is like there's no, like, I can't get bogged down in action. I would get like pages and pages of description and world building and setting and so on, when the much of an actual story's where we are interested in a story is the actual interaction between the characters.
Yeah.
And what they say and reveal about each other, and how they challenge each other, how they talk to each other. So it's funny now to sort of be flexing and sort of testing that. But darn, I forgot kind of where I was going. But anyway.
But yeah, getting good at that, like with the showing, not telling. So like, as instead of just saying like, this is how things were in the back, like you have it come out through dialogue. There was a lot of things that I went back, because I just, it was so easy to, or at least for me, to like explain history just by, as the narrator. But to go back and have it come out in conversation, something about Theon's mother. Like I originally wrote in a whole paragraph, just like Theon didn't, what about his mother, didn't care for her. And just like, no, like let's let that come out like through conversation. Let it be like some emotion attached to that. So I think, and that was the first time trying that, bringing in kind of like an open concept that came out through conversation versus just narrative. Yeah. So, I mean, it's there's so many different things to do.
I want to ask you if you ever read my story from There Be Dragons, but
I started this morning,
okay.
but I'm 2 pages in.
Okay, cool. Darn, where was I going to go? I was going to say, the moment I could feel a shift in the story, like the moment when you, and I've forgotten his name again, the character named after a river, Acadia?
Arcado.
I loved the instant shift in how the characters work together and how the story worked together when they literally have somebody else to talk to.
Yes.
I was taking a walk this morning and realizing maybe I should try and write an article about this or something about how a story is a person turned inside out. And when you sort of understand that, then you realize all of the characters that your main character meets, they're effectively trying to be like mirrors, mirroring back aspects of himself to help him make sense of what's going on. And then when you take the end of a story, you sort of flip it back inside out again, and you end up with like a person who's finally made sense of something. Shakespeare, like sometimes it's like very obviously it's what Shakespeare or a lot of these plays are doing. Something comes in and then goes off stage. It's almost like it's your mind. A thought comes in, you wrestle with it, and it goes off stage again.
Well, and you know that it's funny. This book is very interesting because it's written across, excuse me, 7 years. And so it started in 2018, you know, when I was vacuuming church pews because I got laid off from a job. And so I was finding work. And so my pastor hired me to vacuum the church.
I should be hunting wolves up in here.
Essentially, not even kidding. So as I was vacuuming, I just had this idea of like, you know, what if there was this guy that, you know, was a hunter, blah, blah. And so as I'm vacuuming, it was days and, you know, just that's all I have to do is, and if you ever vacuumed a church, you know, it's a lot of vacuuming, it's a lot of cleaning, it's very quiet.
Podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. So it started in 2018 and it went through 7 years. So that's 7 years of things, of going through different things, of, you know, like major points of anxiety, depression, and excitement and joy and work and jobs and kids. And so in the story are these different points of my life kind of mixed in. Again, it's not a one-to-one match of my life, but it's a very, you know, there's a lot of themes that I pulled into. And Arcado is an interesting point that I had originally written the story. I thought of it as like this, almost like we've talked about these kind of movies where it's sold on focus on one person, like Buried with Ryan Reynolds, just all this one man's journey. And I like that. So my original thought was to have this one man kind of journey because it's like that's how I felt. I felt like just alone and like on my own. And then it only was a point in my life where someone came in and I started having friends and it changed the narrative of my life. So I think it was like Than's journey. You could see how he's kind of struggling and swirling on his own until he meets Arcado. And then that interaction point with somebody else furthers the story along. You think it's going to kind of detract from his journey because he's kind of like a nuisance and he's kind of a you know, joking person and kind of a clumsy boy. But it's that interaction with him, that brotherhood, you know, kind of fits in with our day job as well. That brotherhood actually helps him along. And I thought that was a fun, and plus he was a really fun character to work with because he's kind of like pulls on my goofy, funny side. He has like a funny scenes that I actually, you know, a laugh while writing because I'm just being silly and funny. But so, yeah, definitely fun to incorporate and have different character interactions with, you know, yeah. But I'm just kind of jumping back. I'm super excited about your book. The things you've told me about, you know, the book you're writing is the themes, the format, the setting, the imagery you've shown me. I mean, that is going to be
I think
beautiful.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be beautiful. Super excited about that.
Yeah, we'll do some fun stuff with that one.
Well, that's what I would say. But quick, just to tie up that and what you were saying about the climax, the ending point. And it's so funny. There was a year where I'd written all the way up to the final scene. We'll say the climax moment, and I just couldn't finish it. I was like, I had done. I'm like, no, that's not good enough, and that's not good enough. And then I go, and then it was only thankfully I had that free write typewriter, that one that, you know, it's like a typewriter that you could take anywhere, ink typewriter. And I went to the woods by a lake. It's like the wood line and there's a lake, and I sat and wrote it all right there. And it was just for, you know, whatever. There's probably many factors of why that was able to be done, but I liked being right in that area, the nature, away from like a screen. It was just like, you know, an e-ink screen, so it looks like you're typing on paper. And I was able to do the whole thing. I said, I told myself, I'm just going to write it, whether it's garbage or not. I'm going to write it.
So that also reminds me of something you said earlier, which if you're not a writer, people look at us and go, like, maybe you need medication, but it's
probably
like
true too.
Well, it's probably true too. But it's like you go to write a character. This is what happened with me with main character in my story, where she's I had intuited who I thought she was, and then I go and start field testing her through the story, stress testing her through the events, and then I'm like, well, the story is supposed to go here, so now you got to start doing these things. I'm the boss, I say so. And then it's like weird. All the inspiration just goes, and like you don't know what to write, and you get blocked.
Yeah.
And it's really annoying. I'm like, I guess
Yep.
maybe I just don't know my character well enough to understand her motivation or characterization stuff. So, all right, I'm going to go pretend to be her, and I'll take the Myers-Briggs test. I'm going to take a Strengths Finder. I'm going to go take a Enneagram test. I'm going to put her through the Carl Jung's archetype thing. I'm gonna chart the schnitzel out of this character. I'm gonna well understand. I'm gonna know exactly how she's gonna respond. I'm gonna get Chat GPT to ingest all of this and help me create a predictable output. And it was actually really annoying because the more that I would like typeset the character, I begin to realize she's not fitting any of these. It's like when we create a character that we absolutely love, it's like another human being. In a way, you love them from the inside out. You've intuited who they are from the inside out. And then there comes a point where you're writing the story where the character, this is where other people are like, I thought you were the author creating this thing. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
there's points where the character goes and wants to do something or say something that you're like, I didn't expect that. I didn't foresee that. I didn't actually plan on this being said. Wait, this changes things. Dang it. Now I've got to rewrite my ending and where things are going. Everyone else is like, it's you and a piece of paper. Like you decide where stuff goes. Or you make it up, right? And we're like, no,
I swear.
I'm like holding a chariot. These horses go where they want to go, and I'm just trying to make it. Thread a needle, And that's the. In one sense, I think that's how you're dealing with something a little more than maybe just your own wish fulfillment. Although that's probably in there. A lot of people sit down and write a novel. I'm going to tell this story, and then they tell it, and it's done. And maybe it's amazing half the time, most of the time it's not. I think this is a way that am I actually doing something that might be really meaningful to me is when I get stuck because it wants to accomplish something. It's like there's a guy that I love to follow and learn from. His name's Martin Shaw. He talks about how a story is like an energy field. It has its own motivation, its own purpose, its own reason why it has appeared in you and why you love it, but you don't fully understand it as an author. This is where everybody else kind of, if you're not an author, you don't sort of get this. We don't fully understand why we love something. It's like meeting a girl in an Italian supermarket or an outdoor market for the first time, and you're instantly captivated. And then you just decide in that moment, this is so clear. I'm going to sacrifice the rest of my life and put it at her service. And we're going to build a life together. I don't know where this goes. And then you go and you start dating and you go figure it out and maybe it ends up working out. 20 years later, you're like, I don't even know who this person is, but doesn't even matter. I'm in it for the long haul, right? It's like, it is the same thing with the story. Sometimes, like for me, I had to sit down and write 120,000 words over 3-4 months, whatever it was, to start getting close to the end, to begin to understand, oh, this is what's actually going on and why all of this is mattering to me. And it's weird to have to write through something to begin to understand it.
There was a weird moment. I watched a bunch of videos on different, and I forget who said this, but the suggestion was if you're ever in a moment in your storyline where you're kind of stuck, kind of like sit back in your mind and hit play and just watch it. And I was like, again, like kind of whatever. But there's one scene, there's all these people in a room, and it's kind of a pivotal scene, so I won't but it's they're discussing about what to do. There's something afoot and they're trying to figure something out. So they're at there like, I don't get it. I'm like, I don't know what to do next. So I'm like, let me just hit, and I did that. I just sat back, hit play, and almost like as a movie, like what would happen? And I just watched it and watched and watched. And it's funny how it does go somewhere. And not always, because I did at one point, I didn't make, it's kind of get stuck. You do have to do some mental pushing. But like if you have enough elements put together, you can just hit play. These characters have already been developed. You already know what they're doing. You already know what the plot is. You know what's going on, and hit play and just watch it out. And it was very good. Like it was it's chapter, not immensely big, but it was like a chapter's worth of a scene that I could just sit and I was like, let me just see this thing play out. And it worked. And I think, again, I think certain parts of the story would work well with that. You can't just like, I want to write a book. Let me hit play. Just like out of nowhere. But it was interesting to see, like what we say, like this story has its own life that you kind of just like, if you've built enough of the groundwork, it does kind of just go. and you just follow along. And like that's what Stephen King once said. He was like, one time, like a lot of times, I'll just hit play, and I have to keep up with the story as it comes out, which is an interesting like kind of way of saying it. But
and so there you go. And that's why we've got this whole community and this whole channel over at Legend Fiction, just to try to sit and make sense of this really cool stuff. There's a post I want to write, or I've drafted, called it's about novels as ancient soul technology. It's so weird and cool what stories and what novels and what books are, why they work on us. It's such an ancient form of soul surgery. That we've had since, forever. It's a long time. It's fascinating stuff. Man, okay. Did you watch any cool shows over the weekend?
Yeah, we did.
And you said your top has some special memories or something.
Well, so a friend of mine, a new friend of mine, had opened up a cool like card shop, vintage stuff, old video games, VHS, movies, cassettes, and vintage clothing. So this, I like, I'm a 90s kid, and I like the Olympics. And this is actually a crew neck sweater. It says USA. I don't know if you can see it. It's a crew neck sweater from the 96 Atlanta Olympics in the US. And the rumor has it, I have to find out the full rumor and the full story about it. Anyways, but I thought this was cool. One of the old timey like CBS Olympic announcers or like play-by-play, or reporters. This is from his collection. Like this is actually his shirt. It went to like a thrift market and then he bought it. So that's like
for real.
Yeah. So like while the Olympics were actually going on, like this is from one of the old like reporters. Again, that's the rumor. I'm gonna run with it. I don't know if it's not true. But just had such a blast. Like there's all like 90s and 80s stuff, VHS, cassettes, shirts, cards, baseball, and Pokemon. So we had a fun time. I was in there a few times, and my sons came in, and we all had fun, and my daughter too. We just had a fun time, like looking at old stuff. It's 90s and 80s, but it's just for me and anybody who grew up in that time period. I'm sure like the 70s are appealing to people born in that time, but it's just cozy and it feels like a fun kid's bedroom almost, like from the 90s. So had a fun time there. I know we talked about this in another episode, like 80s and 90s nostalgia. So got to wear it, and it's just like nice thick comfy sweater. So
like the good old days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But yeah, other than that, we started watching Four Seasons on Netflix. That Tina Fey, Steve Carell comedy story. It's like, I think it's a miniseries. It's really fun. It's like, it plays like a book. I don't know if that makes sense, but like it's 8 episodes, and each 2 episodes are a season. So it starts in spring, then goes to summer, and then we just finished summer, and then it's fall and winter. But it's a funny comedy about these 3 couples, and then one of the couples, they're celebrating their 25th anniversary, and then on their 25th anniversary, the guy Steve Carell's character reveals that he wants to divorce his wife. And so it's this whole like kind of like rolling effect of these lifelong these group of friends who've been together for 30 years, and like one friend group breaks up, and like the aftermath of all that. I don't know. So it's very interesting, it's funny, but it's just it plays like a book, in that like the scenes just feel like, and the music behind it is very like, oh, what show is it like? I bet you could look up the music producer, and it's the same as, oh gosh, I don't know, but it's a very fun like story, and so we've been watching that.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
For me, I kept trying to watch shows throughout the weekend, and I kept like bookmarking stuff, and couldn't commit to like anything. My brain was just too I don't know, it was either fritzed or tired, or
maybe both.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember if I did like I tried watching one show. It's a sort of a superhero series, or maybe is it Russian, or I can't remember, but it's called The Hidden or something. Anyhow, it was on Prime. It was sort of interesting. I'll maybe see where it goes, but I just couldn't focus, couldn't stay with it. So tried reading a book and realized, I haven't read a book in ages. I need to go back to reading a book. So I have a book on shamanism that I've been trying to finish getting through. That's been really, really fascinating. And so finally finished through that. And it ended with, I'm so glad I finished reading that thing, because there was a poem right at the end that's one of the most beautiful things I think I've ever read. And I rarely read poetry.
Yeah.
And so it was a stunning poem, kind of like a sort of brief insight into how creation is like put together and how this soul engages diving into everything and going up and surfacing. And anyhow, it's so fascinating book because I don't know anything or enough about how shamanism works on their own terms,
Yeah.
and there's
Written
different
by, yeah.
different versions of it from all over the world and how it's approached. And it's fascinating to read and to realize, man, I need to talk to somebody because I could see how some of the Christian saints and mystics that we have are practicing or following the same things that shamans are doing, but they're doing it in a more intentional following of Christ and the Christian thing
Yeah.
in concert with Christ, as opposed to, blindly stumbling around or outside of, even though, of course, he's with everyone. So it's a fascinating discipline, and it's something that the West has largely completely lost, is this relationship of what the shaman does. There's early in the book, there's really intriguing, no, it's a different book. Anyhow, description between the difference between a priest and a shaman, and it just reads like a fantasy novel. It was so interesting. The guy was like saying the difference between the two is that a priest's job is to help the dead stay dead. And I'm like, what? And
Do
keep
tell.
and
Yeah,
keep the
explain.
living alive. Because a lot of what a priest does, and he's sort of abstracting, across all different cultures, not just Western Christian culture. Sort of the job of a priest is to, like, when something gets buried, it stays there. And it doesn't get like reactivated or infected by spiritual parasites and then comes back, which is
okay.
a problem and
So like
a
in a
plague.
good way.
Yes. So
Okay.
when something is dead, it's supposed to stay that way.
I see.
Evil stays down, locked away from people.
Gotcha.
It's like you're trying to keep people free of spiritual parasites so that you have a chance to live and be yourself and engage with the good you're supposed to do in the world. And that's why we have sacramentals to heal you and restore you back to wholeness and re-engage you with the gods and with the world. But of course, we keep making all of our own bad decisions and stinking thinking, and so we just keep re-inviting all the parasites back in. And so, sort of the priest's job is to help, keep the zombies out, keep the ghosts out, release them, let the dead things go off and out of this arena and off to do the things that they're supposed to be doing. I'm like, man, I want this as a novel version of how to.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I'm looking at what a lot of Catholic priests and what we end up to, and it's like why we keep all being called for exorcisms and stuff. It's because it's still the ongoing job. But then there's this other role, which is fascinating. It's a bit of a Radagast kind of role, where the shaman's job is like, if the priest's job is to hold the lines, like in this arena, in this playing ground, this is where we're supposed to keep humans safe so that we have a chance to be ourselves and level up. Well, the shaman's job is to like go where any person anywhere needs him in any of the realms. And so they engage with nature, they engage with the spirits of nature, they go into the upper world where the gods are, and the underworld where the evil things are, where people can sometimes get lost, and they help re-engage them or rescue them, bring them back, or go to learn something and bring it back. And it's like, I could see how a lot of Christian mystics are like, that's what they're doing too. They're heading off into these, weird blue yonders and learning stuff. Anyhow, fascinating book.
That is fascinating. I mean, gosh, there's probably I think, how big of a book is it? Is it a lot to chew through? Is it
No, it's actually it wasn't that long at all.
Well, that's nice.
And a bunch of it was actually showing you or teaching you the practices of what they do and how that they do it so that you can understand it.
That's nice.
So
do you try to do a balance of like fiction, nonfiction? Do you go back and forth? Do you have, do you do like a stretch of like, I'm reading all things like learning new topics and then I'll read a couple novels? Like, do you have a balance between the two?
So there's moments where, as of now, for the last, maybe 10 years or so, I haven't been able to really get into reading a lot of fiction. I have been starving for a lot of nonfiction, and invariably it's about different philosophies or how the world works, how the mind works, how the soul works, that kind of thing. So there's like a lot of research that's going in. I'm like digging a really deep well, like very deep inside me, and I'm just ravenous to understand stuff. And I will go to find novels, And then I just find I have no time or attention. I cannot keep my attention, even if some of them are good and probably worth finishing.
Sure.
I can't keep attention in them. There's maybe a few, like a sprinkling over the last decade that I've actually finished and absolutely loved.
Yeah.
But they have to be, they're like straight up 5 stars all the way through to.
Well, I feel like that's what I feel like I was in a similar zone where I was just like, I was reading so many nonfiction, but I really wanted to read fiction again. And I had this, this list of like the fiction books everyone should read. I'm like, and they're great. These are elite, these are legends, these are, and so I'm going through, I'm like, but they're tough reads. They're like, how this is, my hot take, like Don Quixote, or like, a novel that's like so good. And again, maybe that's not a good example because that's a translated, from a different language, but like these epic books, they're great. I'll even put my neck out on a limb and say, Lord of the Rings, an amazing series, obviously. However, for me, it's not a breezy read. It's a meaty read. And when I'm primed to pump and I'm in my fiction zone, and I'm really into, like, when I read Lord of the Rings, I was in that zone. I'd read Harry Potter and gone through it. I'm like, let's go to Lord of the Rings again, and really sat with it. But when I was out of it, I would try to go like, okay, let me read through my, I have a stack of books, like the Epic of Gilgamesh and like all these different things. Like, these aren't breezy reads. I'm like, you know what? My fiction pump is dry. I need to prime the pump again. I was like, and I'm just going to go through and find books. I don't care for what age they are. I'm not reading like, children's like cardboard books, but like,
Fluffy goes to market.
Anything to prime the pump. I don't care how good or bad it is. I'm going to read it. And if it's enjoyable, I'm going to go through it. So I started with graphic novels though. And that we had a discussion a while back, and it was, again, nothing. I'm not trying to put that in a different, lower category. It's just, they are quicker reads just by the nature of their medium. And it primed the pump again. I ripped through some really good graphic novels. Then I found this other book. I don't know what it was, but then I went to the Inheritance games. That's my latest one. And it's marketed to love it. The first book I zipped through, and it was one of those books that it's not this meaty, epic, everybody should read before they die, but it was fun. And I was like, that's what I'm missing. I just want books that are fun. Remember, like when we were kids and you picked up a book and like it was just fun reading it, and you just like got excited when you got home from school to finish reading their book. At least I did. So I was like, I'm looking for books like that again, and that's what I wanted to do also when I made my own book. But anyways, do you know of any books, or you are on that hunt to find books again that would just be fun? And it wouldn't, if it's kind of the books you wouldn't even tell anybody about, because it's like, these aren't, the, elite books we should be reading, but they're just fun.
Well, I think that's a whole side conversation about what constitutes a classic and so on. So there is I think that you might really like it. There's a series of 5 books. I think it's pretty easy reading, and I got through it. I absolutely loved it. It's look up The Crippled King. This is an author who's still putting out books. He just published his 5th one like a year ago. But just The Crippled King, I read through that and I could not put it down.
Oh, sweet.
And the theme was the author is somebody who has loved Lord of the Rings, but he always thought there are no stories of what the dwarves actually went through.
Oh, love it. I'm in.
And so he then went and he created this massive, epic, Aragorn-like figure who starts out a selfish sort of hobbit-like dwarf kind of thing, just out for himself, and then who grows into becoming, well, as the title says, a crippled king, someone like Spartacus trying to create a haven for all free dwarves in the world, because dwarves are routinely in states of slavery by other dwarven kings.
Sucked in, yeah.
So I absolutely loved that book.
That's
and it was incredible. There's another one too, also, which was one of those ones where it's like, it seems like it could be interesting, and then I got completely sucked in. I think it was called Lightblade by Zamil Akhtar. And I think he might have like 1 or 2 other books.
Lightblade?
Lightblade. And it's it shows a guy holding 2 red swords made of light against a big Asian-looking dragon thing.
Lightblade, Zamil.
And it's one of those stories that's a bit like Inception set in a fantasy world, and it's kind of weird, and it just keeps getting deeper and more epic until you get to the end, and you're like, I did not expect any of this.
That's interesting. I like that. See, that's what
It's a bit like Jedi with Inception.
Well, that's fun. I like the books that are they come out of the blue, and they like, so one one for me is this book I've mentioned before. I think it was Watership Down, by Richard Adams. It's one of those books that's always been on the shelf, and you read it in school, but I wasn't in that cohort that read it. And it's a book that like you kind of dismiss, like, a book about bunnies. No thanks. And then you read it, and like, for me, it was such a pleasant shocker. Like, you find yourself like wanting to know what these rabbits are going to do, and like because it's this community, this framework and network, in this there's like military aspects of like this, and how like rabbits interact with each other. It's again so an explosive story, but then you would, the age old don't judge a book by its cover. Like, I just dismissed the whole storyline because it's so that was the first book that, like, you know what, I'm gonna not do that anymore, which has gotten to me into graphic novels, got me into fun fiction and things that I wouldn't typically pick up and end up absolutely loving. Another one was like Ready Player One. That was before it became the movie, when it was just
Really?
I read Armada and Ready Player One, Ready Player Two. So I read I forget his name, Ernest Hine, his first book when he wasn't as big, and it was just a pleasant, fun, dweeby, dorky shocker. It was fun. It was so fun. So
Yeah. Speaking of animals, I just learned over the weekend that that one movie, Legend of the Guardians, Owls of Gahul,
Yep.
was made by Zack Snyder. It's like, oh,
Really?
that makes so much more sense now. I love that one. That was such an epic story.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, okay, so for me, I finished that one on shamanism. I'm now reading through a book it's called The Way of the Bodhisattva, which is among the Buddhists, it's the name of like their saints. It's this specific role of people who 100%, and even in their afterlife, commit to the healing and the helping of all creation, no matter where it is. And I've heard about this for a long time, never gotten into understanding it. And so it's this beautiful sort of poem, ancient poem, like thousands of years old, I think, that was brought into Tibet and then translated from like Sanskrit into Tibetan, and now it's in English. And
wow.
So beautiful old tradition. After that, I'm thinking I'm probably going to try to read Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces, because I'm familiar with the book from the outside, but never actually just simply sat down to get into it and understand it. So that'll be fun. So my fun project over the weekend was actually to build out a little bit of a fantasy world, for a couple of different reasons. So we have an event that we're working on, you and I, towards the end of the year, called Legend Haven, which is an online convention. And I've been thinking, like, how could we actually have a lot more fun with this convention? What if there was actually a game that people could play where they collect badges and so on? So I need to go back to building out a world. I had started doing this process for the last Legend Haven, but I didn't have enough help, and it was just too much to think of all at once. I'm thinking maybe I can pull it off for this one. So I was spending time building out the world, and then building out the mechanics for how the game could work if we use the community. So like every space becomes a realm, and posts in those spaces are like NPCs giving you bits of, the world. And then you would go into like a course, and a course, has like quizzes in it. You could treat those as like escape rooms or like tasks. You have to sort of break through. And then once you get the right answer, or you get an answer, an automation sort of fires and your badge gets added to your profile.
Love it. Gamifying anything is a win.
I think it's going to be super fun. So I've been messing around with this idea for a world and realizing, did you ever read the Dragonlance series?
No, I didn't.
I think if you ever want like easy entry point to just get that creative stuff going, I have not read all the way through a Dragonlance novel, but I remember seeing them at the library when I was a kid. And it's like,
ooh, this looks fun.
The early D&D game designers, they created D&D as like, here's the mechanics for a world. And then some people were like, hey, could we write novels for this world? Sure. And so they went,
please
they did
do.
that.
Yes.
And so they don't read like lit RPGs. I think maybe they're the granddaddies of them, but they're actual novels. But I think they're structured around a lot of the lore. And as you know, with D&D, it's like the lore is expansive across tons and tons of books. So last year I thought, man, what if Legend Fiction or Legend Haven could create its own cosmos or its own world where multiple authors could write their own stories in it to constantly expand it. And how could we create a couple of basic little rules where the world could continue expanding, and stuff could be retconned and challenged. There's this game that I've haven't played in years, but it's called League of Legends. And there's one part that's always so fun on the website is you go to look at all the lore, and every character has this stunning art and then a bit of a story, and that sets them up for why they're a character in the game. And it's so cool to read through that. Sometimes people go and create additional stories.
That's like the dream, to have a wiki of like your world. And like, do you ever hear or read or know about the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett?
Only the name. I don't think I've read them.
I've only read one. It's a fun, here's the premise. It's a world. This Discworld is a universe and world built on top of a giant turtle flying through space. So it's a giant turtle with 4 elephants and the Discworld on top. So like that's like the premise. It's like, all right, like, okay, that's weird enough that I'm interested. And he's got after he died, they published this whole like anthology lore book. And so I have it. It has the whole map of Discworld, all like, even like advertisements from what would have been like a store within it. So it's like just fun stuff. So like to build a world like that. So like if Legend Haven was this world, everything's built off of it. He in the beginning he has like, or the book has like all these parameters that everything follows. The Discworld, like the bylaws or something. So it's funny, as long as everything follows the bylaws and follows the main premise that you're all in the same universe and it makes sense. Like that is such an epic and fun thing to do. And it's prime for Legend Haven.
I think it'd be awesome. So I'm still trying to figure out all the pieces. But we've got the 4 houses for the legend fiction community. We're probably going to rely on those again because they're not only have fun, but you have to. You can also learn stuff about yourself, which is also really valuable because they're built on top of the 12 Jungian archetypes clustered into groups of 4, which is warrior, lover, magician, and
I have the book right back there.
Major sage. I can't remember which. King. I think king is the other one.
King.
Yep. And that's
King,
actually
warrior, magician, lover. Yeah.
It's a very good book if you've never read it.
Yeah. I have it on my list. It's right. It's the last book on the shelf.
So, by the way, I don't know if this is helpful to you, but I remember somebody once telling me, stop trying to read a book devoutly, because that's exactly what I would do, especially if it was an important
100% what I do. Yes.
And so he was like, don't do that.
Knock it off.
Burn through it. Read through the whole thing really, really fast, badly. Get the whole thing inside you. It's like like an eagle flying over a landscape. Just know where everything is. Get it all inside you really quick. Then when you know where it's all going, then you can then go back and start reading through it, because you now have a sense of where it is and how stuff fits together. But if you don't have even a bird's eye view of everything, sometimes you just sort of do that and then decide, you know what, for where I am in my life right now, I don't need. I'm
good. I got enough of what I need. Yeah, that's actually really good, especially with books like that. I feel like, because like I even have like, what's the other one? It's the 7-Story Mountain by Thomas Merton, which is again probably a fantastic read. Haven't yet cracked into it. It's a bit of a bigger book. But that one is another one I think would be beneficial to just go through the table of contents, get that, and then as you're going through, kind of like get the information, because there's so much there. And then as I want to like dive into a chapter, dive into I think that's a better way of attacking those books. So thank you. That's actually good. So I have like so many books on the shelf that are just like that, but they're just sitting there. I'm like, no way.
yeah. Like, so maybe try that. And sometimes you can also tell, like, oh, this section is kind of interesting, but maybe it's a gloss or it's a sidebar or something.
Exactly.
So then you sort of, it's like learning what to skip and then double down on what's important. But I'm trying to decide if I want to read it or not, because I was working on a poem this morning, because I was thinking, what if I could define or outline the focus of this whole world that is this legend fiction world? Because here's sort of the kind of the fun idea that I think would be very cool, where the actual convention that we're at is it's like an overlap with what's happening in the actual world. So in the actual world, once a generation, in our case it's every year, once a generation, a whole bunch of adepts from each of the different 4 houses, which are like trained in monasteries and temples all across this world, they volunteer to sort of apparate in, or disappear, a portal in to where the Legend Haven event is happening, and they gather there together to solve problems and to decide how to solve this great new crisis that the world is under or going through, or something like that. And it's kind of a fun reflection for how the Legend Haven convention actually is too, where everybody's sort of on their laptops portaling in to this common event together. And then maybe we can set it up where there's like specific quests that you go on, and part of the job is you create your own, like a D&D character sheet for yourself and your character, and you gussy up your profile to kind of be like that. And then you have to go and join a team, like a fellowship of 4 other people, and you got to lock that in. And then all 4 of you together have to go through the game, go through the tasks. Because what the point of the whole thing is, like, make friends and learn cool new stuff.
Yeah.
I thought it could be hilarious if the job, like say you start the game and it outlines, here's the great problem of the world. Now decide which place you want to go to first: the pirates' market, the deep elven woods, or the desert, I don't know, gladiator arena, something. And so you pick one of these locations to start your adventure with, and so all 4 of you go to that place. When you get to that area, you have to find the specific clues that are posted in the posts and in the quizzes. But the thing is, everybody else is deliberately trying to confuse you in the comments so that you don't know how to continue the rest of the quest. That way, nobody's helping each other, because there can only be like 1 winner or 2 winners or something. So you can't go and just ask everybody else in the comments. They can't help each other because everyone's dropping fake hints and fake clues and stuff.
That's
like that.
fun. It's almost like, it's an offensive defensive too. So you're trying to find it, but you're also trying to defend, possibly maybe your territory has a clue, you trying to defend and trying to persuade other, to get away from. That's also interesting.
So I think it's kind of, I have to keep hammering it out. I think it could be really fun. But there's part of this world from last year just felt immediately obvious. Like, okay, I know how I want part of this to work. And that's going to be above us is what I'm calling the God Storm. And that's where we have all of the how do you call this, angels and the gods who are in charge of how creation is. All of the stars, every star is a god, and they're all locked in like a constant ongoing battle. It's like a broken dance, and because they're in more of eternity and we're in more time, it looks like it's all very still, but it's all ongoing and it's all waiting for us. And so I just want to read the poem I was working on this morning because it's just too cool. And I am very curious what you think. So, sneak peek, this will probably never come back again, and certainly not on this show. So, friends, here you go. Sneak peek this morning.
Exclusive.
So yeah, exactly. I think it's like a page and a half. So it goes something like this, right? This would be intended to be like an outline of like, what is this world? It goes like this. The gods stand still, mid-turn, a swirl of fire frozen, an interrupted dance. It's a liturgy in lament and legend. They hold the line, not for lack of strength, but waiting for you. We are fallen, not as one, but into many. Fragments, the scattered glass of one window shattered across time and skin. Each soul a shard, shining only partial. Cast across centuries, we flicker now in separate shadows. A thumbprint of ruby here, a sliver of cobalt there, the yellow of wheat tucked beneath war. Each piece burns alone, each self a world far from haven. And so the gods, brothers, sisters, friends, family, aching for reunion, descend as wind, as whisper, as wings in the dusk. They do not demand, they offer. They offer. They come as mist in orchard light, as bronze-winged messengers in the twilight of the mind, and say nothing, but offer everything, the stillness of their patience, the strength of their waiting. And as we gather, those who dare to mend, the prism reforms. The first light bends again, rose bleeding into ochre, saffron blooming into indigo, fistfuls of prismed mercy cut through the dark. Color returns. Each joining a chord, we bring with us the blessings of blunder and bruising, gold learned from fire, silver laced with ash, and lapis born of longing, the deep hues of learning, the fruits we earned in the mud, the wisdom pulled from meddling, the blessings hidden in bruises. And the gods' storm still mid-dance, feels the wind stir again. Not until we take our place in the god storm, not until we carry what we have healed into the broken heavens, then can the dance begin again. We god-haunted children, the trembling heirs of saffron suns, young gods with mouths stained by the plum-dark thunder of first speech, we flinch at our own gold, startled by the mirror of light folded deep in our marrow. Half-born into lapis night, we ciphers robed in turquoise flame, too wide, too wild its hem sweeping jasper dust, and drunk on rose fire longing, we stagger hand-held towards the heavens, each breath a vow to return the forgotten hues, bearing our lessons like fruit into the furnace of the sky, to the heart of all. Till then, the storm stands still, grains of godded gold suspended in a shattered sand glass beyond time, between breath, the liturgy halted mid-hymn, incense curling between starred spears of war, our icon missing from the iconostasis, its gaze, its blessing, its presence, a hollow in the wall of light. This gap in the mosaic, a wound where color should be, they wait, not as judges, but as aching witnesses, for the fallen to rise, for the storm born to take their place, to thread the roaring drift in the dance again. And when it does, oh love, what music will rise.
It was beautiful. I like that. I like the shattered glass analogy. I mean, which is such a beautiful, piercing imagery to see. And then the beginning where, you know, shatters across time and skin. It's like it's that's a cool description to see, and then have it tie in at the end too. The shattering. It's like the shattering in the beginning, and the shattering of the sand glass in the end. Beautiful, man. Your mind goes on a journey,
Isn't it?
Listening to it.
I mean, it's partly fun for this world that's being created, but it's also like a sketched outline of what I think actually is how the world actually is.
Yeah.
We're kind of this definition at one point, which I think is so interesting. Where we are quarantined from the rest of creation until we figure our stuff out so that we can join back in with the rest of it. And so here we have to wrestle with all the things like evil and death. And until we learn what those mean and why they're there at all, only then can we like level up and sort of get into the rest of creation. And that's why flying around in spaceships is never going to solve anything. We're called to be here in this moment to learn this.
Well, and it helps that's the it kind of breaks the barrier between, like, if you think of traditionally this world's like you live this little box, and then at the end you connect with the supernatural, the with God. But like, no, like during this time that barrier can be broken. You connect with God in this moment while you're here. I think that's it's a very across many of the old religions, that's a very impactful like thing to learn, that life is not just this sedimentary, like stationary thing. And then you reach this intergalactic, connection. It's in this moment now we have a connection to the everlasting and the eternal.
The gods and angels, our brothers and friends and all, constantly bending down, holding hands, reaching out to help. That whole thing of we're not alone. And that's where I think we chatted, maybe you and I last time, about the sense of how prayer is not just begging the heavens and asking for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe that's one kind of prayer. I think it's more, at least for me, it's more helpful to think of prayer as clearing a garden. Or the state of silence, to see that things were actually being messaged to me. Things are actually growing, but I'm so overgrown and I'm looking in all the wrong places and I'm yelling so loudly. I'm not seeing anything actually growing.
Yeah.
That I should be paying attention to.
It's funny how, like, even in the Lord's Prayer, like the gift of a prayer given to us, that line, thy will be done, is such a like a transmission of will, like between each other, saying your will be done. So it's like, this is my life and I'm living it here, but I want your will to be done. So it's like, that's that opening of that communication, that there's an active story to be seen, and you could either walk in that story or fight it. And I think that's a very interesting, obviously you could dissect that prayer, a million times over, but just that opening of your will be done. It's that acceptance that there's more going on. There's a story being written that you're active in. You've already seen the ending, but I want to be part of it. And so let it be done. I don't know. That's a very...
I think it's amazing. It's only this past year, I think, really hit home this one prayer that we all prayed as kids, right? The guardian angel prayer. And to, first of all, to realize Zoroastrian mystics 10,000 years ago understood or realized we each have a guardian angel. And the church now holds up this one particular prayer for us where we ask the guardian angel, beloved gift of God to each of us, to, and then the last line, to light and guard, to rule and guide my life. These are really big words to think of. You know, I don't let anybody else sort of hold those, you know, that kind of power or authority, or, you know, I don't say to anybody else, rule my life, you know, guide my life, light it, and guard it. So to be able to, I think it was Padre Pio who would routinely tell people and ask your guardian angel to know your mind. I can't exactly remember it, so I've got my own way of saying it. Calm my mind, know my thoughts, know my heart. Because you have to give permission to allow it to know your inner life. And then to realize it every day, if you're praying this prayer every day. And I think especially it's important to be cultivating. This is one relationship that is constantly active, no matter how alone you are. It's constantly going on. And this is your best friend who understands you from the inside out and who loves you unreservedly. I think it's in scripture or something that says your angels not only see the face of God, but they, I can't remember, but they see the face of God at all times. And they're ministering or witnessing that or presencing that to you. So, anyhow, taking that seriously, I think is a beautiful, beautiful and powerful thing.
That's amazing. Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, I think this conversation could ramp up to another hour long.
We just went,
you know,
all over the place on this conversation. So,
but I love it. Yeah,
mostly, yeah. What do we just talked all about? So your novel and movies and creativity and writing a book. So this is a very focused on inventiveness sort of conversation. So we should probably wrap. So friends, if any of this was interesting or helpful, go ahead and say hi in the comments. We'd love to meet you. Please hit the like button. And if you want to argue about anything, you are welcome to do that too. YouTube will probably give you cookies.
Tell us off and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next time and give you a shout out. So shout out to Gabby, who is routinely awesome following
just
this.
The best.
We've got one or two other kind of people who've DM'd me and have said that they've enjoyed these conversations too, which is also fun. We're just going to keep sort of trucking along, trying to figure out what we're doing, and hopefully sharing what we can learn. So if anybody has questions, that's always helpful for us to share stuff that's helpful too. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Drink coffee.